It was just another mundane afternoon when Marcus Adler wandered into the dusty corner of the local thrift shop. He was an ordinary man with a relatively unremarkable life. By day, he worked as an archivist at the city library, cataloging books no one ever read. By night, he spent his time diving into the world of forgotten objects, old coins, ancient maps, and yellowed manuscripts that he would find in small, hidden shops around town. There was something about these items, their silent history, that always intrigued him. They told stories of times long past, moments suspended in the quiet folds of time. That day, like so many others, Marcus was on his usual route through the shop, his fingers grazing over rows of well-worn books and discarded trinkets. He was about to leave, his mind already preoccupied with thoughts of the evening's dinner, when something unusual caught his eye. Beneath a stack of dusty journals and old diaries, an object shimmered faintly, as though calling to him. He bent down to examine it more closely. At first glance, it appeared to be an old, rusted key. Its surface was worn, the edges chipped and corroded with age. But what caught Marcus's attention were the intricate markings etched along the shaft. They looked almost like a forgotten language, curling around the metal like secret symbols. There was something about it, something familiar, yet inexplicable, that tugged at his curiosity. The shopkeeper, a wiry old man with gray hair and sharp, piercing eyes, watched Marcus as he picked up the key. His expression shifted slightly, as though Marcus had just done something he wasn't supposed to. "Be careful with that one," the man muttered, his voice low and gravelly, almost as if he were warning him of a hidden danger. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't think much of. It was just a key after all. What harm could it do? "How much for this one?" he asked, gesturing to the rusty object in his hand. The shopkeeper hesitated for a moment, then spoke again, his voice quieter this time. $2. But be sure you know what you're holding." Marcus paid the small price, brushing off the old man's strange warning. He had heard odd things from eccentric shopkeepers before, but as he left the shop, the key felt strangely heavy in his pocket, like a weight pulling him toward something he couldn't yet understand. That evening, after dinner, Marcus sat at his desk and examined the key more closely under the light of his desk lamp. The more he studied it, the more peculiar it became. The markings on the shaft weren't random. They followed a pattern, repeating in a way that seemed deliberate. There was no mention of such a key in any of the books he had read, but something nagged at him. A memory, perhaps, of a text he had once encountered years ago. He turned to his old archives, searching through the dust-covered volumes of history and forgotten texts. After hours of scouring through old documents, he found something that made his pulse quicken. A reference to a hidden vault, one that contained truths so dangerous they had been sealed away for centuries. The key, it seemed, was the only known object capable of unlocking the vault. As Marcus read through the cryptic passages, he discovered that the vault had been built by an ancient and secret organization known as the Veil. They were a shadowy group that manipulated history and controlled the flow of information for their own purposes. According to the text, this vault contained knowledge so powerful it could change the course of humanity, if it were ever unlocked. The more he read, the more a sense of dread settled over him. The Veil was no mere conspiracy. It was a centuries-old force that had shaped the world from behind the scenes. They were the hidden architects of many of history's most significant events: wars, revolutions, assassinations, all orchestrated to serve their mysterious and unfathomable goals. The key in his hand was no ordinary object. It was the key to uncovering a conspiracy that had been buried for years, a truth that could tear apart the foundations of everything Marcus thought he knew. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this kind of knowledge, this kind of power. But something deep inside him told him he had no choice. The key had chosen him. As Marcus continued to research, a strange sense of urgency filled him. There was more to this than he could have imagined. The key was not just a relic from the past. It was the key to something far greater. It was the beginning of a journey that would take him into the heart of a conspiracy that had been carefully hidden from the world for centuries. Just as he was about to delve deeper, a strange thought crossed his mind. Was he being watched? The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was not alone. Suddenly, the quiet of his apartment seemed oppressive, like the walls were closing in on him. The key in his hand felt heavier than before, a reminder that his life had just changed forever. The weight of the discovery pressed heavily on Marcus as he sat at his desk, staring at the key that had started everything. The more he thought about it, the more questions emerged. The vault, the veil, what did they mean? Who were the people behind this shadowy organization, and why had they gone to such great lengths to conceal their existence? The more he researched, the more dangerous and vast the conspiracy seemed to grow. The old books he dug through revealed fragmented pieces of the past, fragments of history that had been erased, redacted, and hidden from public knowledge. The veil wasn't just a fringe group. It was a vast and powerful organization that had its fingers in every major event in history, from political upheavals to economic shifts. They were the hidden forces behind it all. Marcus felt like a man stumbling into a labyrinth, each step taking him deeper into an unknown world of power and secrecy. Late one night, as Marcus sifted through old, yellowed documents, he came across something unsettling. A reference to a man named Elias Graves, a historical figure whose death had been widely reported as a tragic accident. According to the notes he found, however, Graves was deeply connected to the Veil, and his death had been part of an elaborate cover-up to hide a powerful secret. The mention of Graves sent a chill through Marcus's spine. It seemed that every lead he uncovered only led to more questions, and with each question, the danger increased. In an attempt to make sense of it all, Marcus reached out to an old friend, Lena, a journalist he had known from his university days. She had always been curious about the world's darker corners, and Marcus hoped that she could offer a new perspective on the matter. Over the years, Lena had become somewhat of a recluse, having published a few investigative pieces that had made powerful people uncomfortable. Her career, once promising, had been derailed after her final exposé on corporate corruption and government manipulation. After that, she disappeared from the public eye, only to resurface sporadically under different names and fake identities. Lena's response came quickly. "Meet me tomorrow at the old diner. I'll help, but you need to be ready for what you're about to uncover. Once you know, There's no going back. The next day, Marcus found himself sitting across from Lena at a dimly lit table in a cafe he hadn't visited in years. The smell of burnt coffee and old grease filled the air, but it was the only place they could meet without drawing attention. Lena looked the same, sharp, intense, with an air of someone who had seen too much of the world's darkness. "You've found something, haven't you?" Lena asked, her voice low and steady. Marcus nodded. He told her about the key, the vault, and the shadowy organization that seemed to control everything behind the scenes. Lena listened without interruption, her eyes narrowing as he spoke. When he finished, she sat back in her chair, eyes flickering with both caution and intrigue. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," Lena said. "The Veil is not just some fringe group. It's an ancient network of people who have been controlling world events for centuries. Wars, elections, the collapse of empires. It's all part of their grand design, and they don't want anyone messing with it." Marcus felt a shiver run down his spine. But why hide all of this? Why keep it buried? Lena shook her head, her lips curling into a bitter smile. "Because the truth is too dangerous. If people knew, if they understood, how much of their lives have been shaped by the Veil's influence, it would collapse everything. Governments, institutions, trust, everything." The weight of her words hung in the air between them. Marcus hadn't fully understood the implications of what he was uncovering until now. The Veil wasn't just a conspiracy, it was the foundation of everything he had ever known. And now, by finding that key, Marcus was somehow connected to it all. But Lena's warning wasn't the only thing weighing on his mind. As they spoke, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He had noticed a man in a dark jacket lurking near the diner's entrance, watching them closely. The man's gaze had never left their table, and every time Marcus glanced up, he saw those cold, calculating eyes staring at him. After their meeting, as Marcus walked through the deserted streets, he felt the man's presence following him. He quickened his pace, but no matter how fast he moved, the sense of being hunted grew stronger. That night he couldn't sleep. His mind raced with thoughts of Lena's warning, the Veil, and the key. He knew he couldn't stop now, not when he was so close to the truth. But the deeper he went, the more dangerous it became. Who could he trust? Lena had warned him, but he couldn't help but feel like she was holding something back. And that man at the diner, who was he? The key had already begun to unravel the fabric of Marcus's life, but the path ahead wasn't just filled with questions. It was lined with dangers, hidden enemies, shifting alliances, and moral choices that would force Marcus to question everything he thought he knew about himself and the world around him. One thing was clear. The journey he had begun could destroy everything, or it could save the world. But Marcus wasn't sure which it would be. As the days passed, Marcus felt the weight of the discovery pressing more heavily upon him. His ordinary life, once filled with routine and predictability, had been upended by the mysterious key and the web of secrets it led him into. Lena's warning echoed in his mind. The Veil is not just a conspiracy. It is an ancient network of power, one that shapes the world from the shadows. He knew now that he had crossed a line and there was no turning back. The further Marcus went down the rabbit hole, the more dangerous things became. He had learned to trust Lena, but something about the situation didn't sit right with him. Her warnings were laced with a sense of urgency and fear, but there was something more, an underlying tension. Lena had never been one to shy away from the truth, but even she seemed wary now. It was as though the knowledge of the veil's existence was eating away at her. She had seen too much and been forced to bury it. It wasn't long before Marcus received an unexpected message. A letter slipped under his door with only the words, "Meet me." "I know what you're looking for." There was no signature, no explanation. But Marcus, desperate for answers, followed the instructions. It led him to a rundown, industrial part of the city, far from his usual haunts. He stood in front of an old, abandoned warehouse, its windows boarded up, and the air around it heavy with the scent of rust and decay. Marcus hesitated for a moment, but then pushed the door open. Inside, he was greeted by the sight of a man who appeared to be waiting for him. "Marcus Adler," the man said, his voice cold but steady. "You're digging into something far bigger than you realize." The man, whose name was Eli, introduced himself as a former member of the Veil, though he preferred to call it the Syndicate now. He had defected from the group years ago after realizing just how far-reaching their influence truly was. At first, Marcus didn't know whether to trust Eli. After all, this was the very man who had once been part of the organization responsible for so much suffering, so much control. But Eli's eyes told a different story. There was fear in them, a quiet desperation, the kind that only came from knowing too much. It was clear that Eli, much like Lena, had been running from the truth, but in a different way. The difference, Marcus realized, was that Eli had lived with the Veil's secrets. He had seen their power firsthand and had made the decision to walk away, even at great personal cost. "We have to destroy it," Eli said, leaning forward, his voice intense. "The Veil has been manipulating the world for centuries. They've been pulling the strings of wars, economies, and governments, turning chaos into order so that they can stay in control. The vault? It's their most guarded secret, and the key you have?" Eli trailed off, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "You don't know what you've found. It's not just a key. It's the key to their undoing." Marcus stood there, absorbing Eli's words. He wasn't sure what to make of them. Could he really trust this man, whose past was so tangled with the organization he was now hunting? But something about Eli's sincerity, his urgency, made Marcus want to believe him. Eli explained that the Veil had made sure no one would ever find the vault. They had used misinformation, altered historical records, and removed all traces of its existence. But now that Marcus had the key, the Veil would do everything in their power to stop him. Eli warned that the closer Marcus got to unlocking the vault, the more dangerous his situation would become. Marcus's head was spinning. He had trusted Lena, but Eli's appearance added a new layer of complexity to everything. Eli had information, but was he manipulating Marcus for his own purposes? Had his defection truly been an act of moral conviction? Or had he simply grown tired of being a pawn in the game? Marcus couldn't know for sure, but one thing was clear. Eli was a man who knew the Veil's inner workings, and that made him both an ally and a potential threat. As Marcus weighed his options, his mind kept returning to Lena. He had confided in her about the key, but something had changed in their relationship. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but Lena had begun acting distant. She was withholding information, steering their conversations away from certain topics. The trust between them had begun to erode, and Marcus wasn't sure if it was because of the growing pressure of their investigation, or if there was something more. Late one night, Marcus received a cryptic phone call. A voice on the other end, one that sounded too familiar, whispered, "You don't know who you're working with, Marcus. The truth isn't always what it seems. Watch your back." The line went dead. Marcus's heart raced as he hung up the phone. He had trusted Lena. Had she been playing him all along? Or was she simply trying to protect him from the dangerous path he was on? There was no way to know for sure, but the stakes were higher than ever. The Veil was real, and they were closing in on him. The next day, Lena reached out to him asking to meet. He was torn. Did he trust her, or had she become just another adversary in this twisted game? He knew now that no one in this story was truly what they seemed. Allies and adversaries were interchangeable, and in a world where truth was so easily manipulated, it was impossible to know who to trust. As Marcus prepared to meet Lena, he realized that the next step in his journey was one of no return. He had found the key, but now it was clear. He was walking a dangerous line, surrounded by enemies and allies whose true motivations he couldn't yet understand. And soon, he would have to make a decision that would shape not only his future, but the fate of the world itself. As Marcus stood on the precipice of the unknown, his world had begun to unravel. The key, once just a peculiar relic, now held the power to expose one of the world's most dangerous secrets. The Veil, an organization so powerful it had shaped history from the shadows, was within his reach. The vault, its most guarded secret, contained the truth about their centuries-long control. Yet Marcus was increasingly unsure whether he should open that door. The deeper he delved, the more the lines between right and wrong blurred. Lena, the journalist who had once been his trusted ally, had grown distant and evasive. Eli, the former Veil member who claimed to have defected, spoke of destroying the organization from the inside. But Marcus felt torn between these two paths, each holding its own set of moral questions. Lena's warnings were clear. The Veil is a destructive force. Their influence is a poison to society. If you expose them, it will shake the world to its core. She had repeatedly emphasized the dangers of unveiling the truth, but her growing detachment from their mission made Marcus wonder if there was more she wasn't saying. Was Lena truly the ally she appeared to be, or was she hiding something? Eli, on the other hand, had become the voice of rebellion, urging Marcus to take action. The truth must come out, Eli insisted, his voice filled with the fervor of a man who had lived in the Veil's grasp and understood its dangerous hold on humanity. We can't keep hiding from it. The world needs to know how much of its history has been manipulated. You have the key. You have the chance to stop this once and for all. Yet something about Eli made Marcus uneasy. He had defected from the veil, but was his agenda entirely trustworthy? Marcus could feel the tug of uncertainty in his gut. If Eli was being genuine, then why had he only now chosen to reveal himself? Could his motivations be as complex as his history with the veil? Or was he simply using Marcus for his own purposes? Eli had shown that he was a man who knew how to manipulate situations to his advantage, and Marcus couldn't ignore that fact. The key Marcus held was not just a literal object, it was a metaphor for the power to change everything. But as he stood in the midst of his growing uncertainty, Marcus began to question whether the world could handle such a revelation. The veil had controlled the course of history for centuries, and their influence had become deeply woven into the fabric of every major institution. Could the world survive the chaos that would erupt if its carefully constructed foundations were shattered? He thought of the implications. Governments would crumble, social order would collapse, people's trust in their leaders, their institutions, and even each other would vanish. The very concept of truth itself could be undermined, leaving the world in a state of confusion and distrust. Would it be worth it to expose the veil, knowing the destruction it would cause in its wake? Lena had once said, "Some truths are better left buried." Was she right? Had she been trying to protect him all along, even if that meant withholding the full extent of the danger they faced? If Marcus exposed the truth, it might indeed bring an end to the veil's reign. But at what cost? His mind constantly returned to the question, what is the right thing to do? Marcus had always prided himself on being a man of logic, someone who believed in the power of knowledge and understanding. But now, with the key in his hand, knowledge seemed more like a burden than a gift. Marcus knew that the decision he faced wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about what the truth would do to the world. He had seen the darkness of the veil, the lives they had destroyed, the people they had controlled. But had he become just as blinded by his desire for justice as the veil's operatives had been by their thirst for power? Was his quest for truth turning into an obsession, one that could blind him to the real consequences? Lena's words echoed in his mind. The truth is dangerous, Marcus. It's a weapon that can destroy everything. She wasn't wrong, but was it enough to make him walk away? Could he live with the knowledge of what the veil had done, knowing that it was better to let the world remain ignorant? The burden of choice weighed heavily on Marcus. He had come so far, but now he was stuck. To uncover the truth was to risk everything, the world, his own life, and the lives of everyone he knew. But to leave it hidden was to allow the veil to continue their silent control, to let the lies persist, keeping society locked in a prison of deception. He sought solace in Eli, who spoke with a certainty that Marcus could not ignore. You're already part of this, Marcus. You've found the key. There's no turning back. You can't unlearn the truth. But then there was Lena, who stood on the other side, whispering caution into his ear. Some truths are better left hidden. We can't destroy everything we know. The world isn't ready for this. Marcus realized that the decision wasn't just about right or wrong. It wasn't about truth or lies. It was about trust. Who could he trust in this mess of shifting allegiances? Was Eli truly on his side, or was he just as dangerous as the veil? Was Lena withholding the truth because she was trying to protect him, or because she feared what would happen if the truth came to light? He stood at a crossroads. The weight of the key in his pocket seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. The vault, the truth, the future, it all lay in his hands. And the decision Marcus faced was the hardest of his life: to reveal everything, or to keep the secrets buried, for the sake of the world's fragile peace. The night Marcus found the vault was like any other, but its weight would crush the reality of his life forever. Standing at the entrance of the hidden chamber, he felt a chilling sense of inevitability. The key, once an object of curiosity, now felt like a living thing in his hand, pulsing with an energy he could barely comprehend. He could feel its history, its power. It wasn't just a key to a door, but a key to unlocking the very secrets that had shaped the world as he knew it. The vault stood before him, hidden beneath layers of forgotten history and guarded by traps and layers of deception. The ancient stone doorway was covered in strange symbols, symbols that seemed to resonate with the key in Marcus's hand. He knew that unlocking this door meant stepping into a reality far beyond anything he had imagined, a reality that had been hidden from the world for centuries. And yet, despite the fear gnawing at him, Marcus couldn't turn away. Beside him, Lena stood silently, her eyes fixed on the door. She had been with him through this journey, but now she seemed more distant than ever. Her expression was guarded, as if she had already made her peace with what lay ahead. She wasn't saying much anymore, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that she knew more than she had told him. Could she be hiding something about the vault or its contents? But even as these thoughts swirled in his mind, he knew there was no time for second-guessing. The vault had always been more than just a mystery to him. It was the final step in a journey he had been unknowingly preparing for his entire life. The key had chosen him, and now the world was waiting for him to decide whether it was ready for the truth. With a deep breath, Marcus inserted the key into the slot in the vault's door. There was a moment of stillness, a pregnant pause where time seemed to stretch. The air grew thicker, the silence more profound, until, with a heavy groan, the door began to shift. The sound of ancient mechanisms unlocking echoed in the cavernous chamber, and for a brief moment, Marcus felt like he was standing on the edge of history. The door opened, revealing a vast room bathed in dim, flickering light. The vault was more than just a storage space. It was a monument to secrecy. Inside, rows upon rows of shelves lined the walls, filled with ancient manuscripts, brittle scrolls, and worn leather-bound books. But at the center of the room, there was something far more significant. A pedestal, and on it, an object that seemed to hum with an energy of its own. It was a crystal, glowing faintly with an ethereal blue light. Marcus stepped forward, almost as if in a trance, drawn to it by an unseen force. He could feel the pull of its power, the weight of its importance. This was it, the heart of the vault, the truth, the power, the reason the veil had gone to such lengths to keep it hidden. Lena's voice broke through his thoughts. "Do you understand what this means, Marcus?" Her tone was quiet but urgent. "This is the key to everything. The veil's control, the wars, the manipulation, all of it. If you touch that crystal, everything changes. You can expose them, but there's no going back. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the crystal's surface. As soon as his skin made contact, a surge of visions flooded his mind. He saw glimpses of the past, wars, revolutions, assassinations, all orchestrated by the Veil. Their influence had shaped history from behind the scenes, pulling the strings of nations, creating chaos to build order, controlling the world through fear and power. But then, something more disturbing began to emerge from the visions. What looked like a future where the truth was exposed. The world in chaos, governments collapsing, societies crumbling into anarchy. The crystal was not just a tool to reveal the Veil's secrets, it was a mirror to the devastating consequences of revealing those secrets. Marcus was faced with a staggering realization. The Veil had orchestrated these events, yes, but they had also kept the world from descending into absolute chaos. The power they wielded was not just about control. It was about keeping the delicate balance of civilization intact. He pulled his hand away from the crystal, shaken. His pulse raced as he absorbed the weight of the vision. Everything he had been taught, everything he had believed about truth and justice, now seemed irrelevant. The truth had a price, and that price was the very fabric of society. If he exposed the Veil, it would unravel the world. But if he kept the secret, he would be complicit in the Veil's manipulation. The decision was now in his hands. Lena stood a few paces away, watching him silently, her face unreadable. She had always known what was at stake. She had warned him of the danger, but Marcus had been too eager to find the truth. Now he understood, but Eli's words echoed in his mind as well. The truth must come out. The world cannot be controlled by lies anymore. His thoughts twisted, torn between the moral weight of exposing the truth and the fear of the consequences. Was it worth it to dismantle the Veil, knowing that it could bring the world to its knees? Or was it better to let the lies continue, to allow the control that had kept society from spiraling into chaos to persist? Marcus turned to Lena. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The final step was before him, and the gravity of the moment hung heavily in the air. Lena's gaze softened, but her answer was firm. "We decide. It's always been up to us." The crystal on the pedestal flickered in response, as though sensing the weight of their choice. In that moment, Marcus realized that the key wasn't just the means to uncover the Veil's secrets. It was the means to choose the future of the world, whether it would be built on lies or on the truth, whether it would crumble or rise again, was now in his hands. And as he took a step closer to the crystal, Marcus knew that there would be no going back. The door had opened, and now it was time to face the consequences of the truth, no matter how devastating it might be. Marcus stood at the crossroads of history, his hand hovering just above the crystal that had the power to change everything. The vault, hidden away for centuries, held the truth behind the Veil's manipulation of the world, and Marcus now had the means to expose it. But as he gazed at the crystal, a sense of foreboding gripped him. It was as if the very fabric of reality was holding its breath, waiting for him to make a choice. This was it, the moment that would define everything. Lena, who had been his ally from the beginning, stood by his side, her face a mixture of concern and resolve. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "The world isn't ready for the truth. You saw what it could lead to. Chaos, anarchy. People won't know how to handle it." Her words echoed in Marcus's mind, but they were not the only voices he heard. Eli's voice rang in his ears as well. "You can't leave the world in the dark. The veil has controlled everything for far too long. You have the power to end it. You have the chance to change everything." He could feel the tension between them, the weight of their different beliefs, each one urging him in opposite directions. Lena wanted to preserve the world as it was, even with the veil's dark influence lurking in the background. Eli, however, had seen too much of the veil's power to allow it to continue. He believed in the necessity of exposing the truth, no matter the cost. The crystal before him seemed to pulse with an energy that felt both alien and familiar. It was a beacon of truth, a door to the future. But what future would it lead to? He had seen the visions: wars, broken governments, lives destroyed by the fallout of exposing the veil's secrets. The chaos would be undeniable. But was it worth it? Was the truth more important than the fragile order that had kept the world functioning, even if that order was built on lies? Marcus's thoughts swirled, and a deep inner conflict tore at him. He had always prided himself on being a seeker of truth. As an archivist, he had spent years uncovering forgotten stories, hidden histories, and forgotten relics. But now, standing at the edge of revealing the most profound secret in history, he wondered, was truth always worth fighting for? Lena reached out, gently placing a hand on his arm. "Think about what this could mean. We could expose the veil. Yes, but we'll also be tearing apart everything that keeps people safe. People are fragile, Marcus. If they knew what we know, if they understood the full scope of how the veil has controlled everything, what would that do to them? What would that do to you?" Marcus pulled away slightly, shaking his head. "But they deserve to know. The lies, the manipulation, it's not right. People should have the truth, even if it's painful." "I agree," Lena said, her voice soft but unwavering. "But truth without guidance, truth without the ability to process it, is dangerous. People might not know how to handle it. You've seen it. Exposing the veil could break everything." The crystal before him gleamed with an almost hypnotic allure, drawing him in further. Marcus had the power to change everything, to end the veil's reign, to expose their secrets to the world. But he also knew that the consequences could be catastrophic. Trust in institutions, governments, and even people themselves would crumble. The very fabric of society could unravel, and chaos would reign in its place. As his mind raced, memories of his research flooded back to him. The veil wasn't just a secret group of conspirators. It had woven itself into the very foundation of the world. From the beginning of time, it had been responsible for shaping events, guiding the course of history, and controlling the narrative of what the world had believed to be true. They had done so for the good of society, or so they claimed. But was that enough to justify their control? The vault had revealed everything. Marcus could feel the weight of that truth now, resting on his shoulders like a burden too heavy to bear. The world had been built on lies, yes, but those lies had kept the peace. The veil had orchestrated the wars, the conflicts, and the power struggles, but it had done so with the intent of controlling the chaos. The system, though flawed and deeply manipulative, had created a balance that kept society from falling apart. He turned to Lena, his eyes searching hers. What if I make the wrong choice? What if exposing the truth destroys everything? Lena's expression softened, and for the first time in a long while, Marcus saw the vulnerability in her eyes. There's no right or wrong, Marcus. There's just the choice. Whatever you choose, you'll have to live with it. The world may never be the same again, but that doesn't mean it will be worse. It's just different. Eli's words echoed in Marcus's mind again. The truth must come out. The veil's reign has lasted long enough. If we let them keep controlling us, we'll never be free. He looked at the crystal one last time, then glanced at the two people who had accompanied him on this journey. One, a woman who had been his ally, urging caution. The other, a man who had defected from the veil, urging action. Both had valid points. Both had seen the consequences of their actions. And now, Marcus had to decide. The crystal beckoned him, its power undeniable, but so were the consequences. He had always believed that knowledge was power, but now he understood that knowledge could be a weapon. The choice was his: to reveal the truth, to tear down the veil's empire and risk everything, or to leave it hidden, to protect the world from the chaos the truth could cause. With a deep breath, Marcus made his choice. He stepped back from the crystal, turning toward Lena. I can't do it. Not yet. The world isn't ready. The crystal's glow dimmed slightly, but the path forward was clear. Marcus had chosen to protect the world for now. But deep down, he knew this wasn't the end. The truth would come out eventually. The veil's time would run out. But for now, Marcus had made a choice: to let the world continue on, for better or for worse, until the day the truth could no longer be denied.